Well, hello, angry Albertans. Lots going on. Lots going on. One of the biggest stories we're going to discuss tonight is the heck's going on with our beds. I mean, last April, Kenny was promising to add 1,081 beds, and we haven't seen any of them. Matter of fact, they've been cutting them all. We're going to get into that. David's been taking the screenshots, doing some charting. Very interesting stuff there, and he's really got AHS chasing it. Quite something to say. They held a big press conference yesterday. Everybody thought it was going to be a whole bunch of crazy new restrictions coming down, but they're just holding the line. I mean, why would they have to add anything else to what they've already done? Because Kenny's fascist solution seems to be as effective as anybody else's more extreme passport systems. Why would he have to increase power of the vaccine passport when all the employers are forcing their employees to choose between their jobs or getting the jab? So it's quite something. I mean, a lot of City of Edmonton employees are forced on a leave of absences right away here. AHS doesn't appear to be backing down. Quite something what they're doing. And it's quite something. What blows my mind about this is that you can go to a restaurant if you have your Vax Pass, forgery, whatever. But the person waiting the tables doesn't have to be vaccinated. The cook doesn't have to be vaccinated. But you want to go to a City of Edmonton facility where you theoretically don't require a Vax Pass, but instead of you needing one as a customer, they're forcing all the employees to get that. And I don't understand any sense at all. But hey, I guess it's upping Kenny's jab numbers. That's all that matters to Kenny, is eliminating the control group entirely. Heaven forbid we have any evidence should anything. Not that it isn't happening already. So, and people seem to be understanding what's happening. I think the frantic pleas for help are slowing down, which is kind of sad that what's happening. You move forward, whatever forward is. For me, that's not getting vaccinated. That's what that looks like. I'm not going to risk my health just to meet one of the states. Ask to silly mandates. They anyhow, lots of protests going on all over the place. I noticed that somebody's threatening to punch me in the face on Saturday. Right, always sent to me. Oh, look what Pat King is going to do to you on Saturday. That's real classy, Pat. Real classy. He's telling everybody that he's gonna save the world again. Basically, he's already done it, but he just needs you to come down and sleep over on the legislature grounds. Except he can't get enough people to sleep over right now because the sheriffs keep him. So he needs like 1,000 people. They have maybe about 2 now. So all we need is like another 980 people. They'll be able to chase those sheriffs out of there. And that camp out will solve it all, right, Pat? Because protesting doesn't work. Marching doesn't work. Nothing works, Pat. What you said the other day. So I guess now you're going to camp, because camping will work. You're going to camp. But you're not even camping. So basically you're just protesting every day. So that's a huge, drastic improvement, Pat. I'm so glad you're looking out for us all. I find it very interesting that just like with the claims that were made about his court case a couple months ago, where he had these huge promises. He had saved the world. He was the reason restrictions had ended. He had proven that COVID-19 did not exist. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with anything Pat King says. And he said, we just got to wait for the transcripts. And it'll only take a couple days. We can get the transcripts, and they're $1,100. Well, I don't know, $3,800 is what we can see was donated. It took, I don't know, way over a month to see these transcripts, and they showed nothing like what they were supposed to go, as per Pat King. And here we have the same situation where Pat has sealed a document, a 136-page document. He's mailed it to Kenny, and we can't see it because he hasn't published it unless you go down to the legislature grounds to see it. Well, you got gifted $3,800 and probably more in beer and smokes money, Pat. I think you could go to Staples, and I think you could have them run that through their scanner. You could post that up for us to see. But there's nothing of value in it. So you know what? Don't even bother, because I know it's bogus. He's got, what, 30... What's he claiming? He's got some huge lien he's put on the government? Oh, this sounds familiar. I can hear David laughing in the background. He's put a lien on something like $3.8 billion of government money that they're not going to be allowed to spend until they answer his claims. Well, that's not how it works, Pat. That's how sovereign citizens think things work. That's how people who don't think they need driver's licenses, don't think they need car insurance, and don't think we need to pay taxes. That's how they think things work. Right? That's what Norman Traversy did, Pat. See, you just keep recycling all of these old scams that everybody's already tried while giving everybody else flack for doing things that have already been tried. But this is just a reincarnation of what Norman Traversy pulled way, way back at the very beginning of everything. He had this huge binder full of stuff, and he was making a USMCA complaint, and it had to go to the U.S. Embassy in Ottawa, and they had a big ceremony and a big march. And you know how much money Norman Traversy ended up making off that scam? Yeah, over $180,000 for doing nothing other than walking around with a big stack of papers. Well, Pat learned something, just like he learned something when Norman Traversy copyrighted the liberal gun ban bill. I don't know if anybody remembers that. See, I've been awake. I've been working at this for a long time. I've seen all these scams form and blow up and go away. So Norman Traversy, he patented the liberal gun bill ban thinking that, well, Trudeau can't use it if I own the copyright because I'm so smart, SMRT. I am so smart, SMRT. Right? Right? Is that the little dance they do when they come up with these idiotic ideas? So, of course, nothing came of that because anybody can copyright anything. All it is a database. You pay $50, you go enter the information, and now you're an entry in the database that says whoever you want is now the owner of whatever you want. All it is a record-keeping service. It means nothing unless you actually own the work that you are copywriting. If you own the work, then it means something. But if you don't own the work, well, you just paid $50 for nothing, and you're an idiot. That's what Norman Traversy did, and that's where Pat got the idea to copyright one of Dina Hinshaw's public health orders, which was his initial attempt at a defense with these tickets he just lost, but sort of claimed to win and let Stu Peters advertise all over the world that he had won, and then it took weeks to walk back those claims, months to walk back those claims. And now anybody who says that he pretended to win his case, he calls a liar. But that's exactly what he did, right? He didn't even organize that protest. It wasn't his protest. He lies about that. He's lied about me. He's lied about everything. So he copyrighted those public health orders. What came of that? Nothing. Nothing, because it's not a defense. It doesn't prove anything. And you know where Norman Traversy got that idea? This is an ancient sovereign citizen scam to copyright your own name. Because if you copyright own name, the police can't write you a ticket. Na, 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 na. You can't. No, that's not how. You know what else doesn't work? When you say, I don't understand, or I don't stand under. That doesn't work. Or I do not contract. I do not contract. You can just rant and rave about, I do not contract for days. Not going to fix anything. And so, without even seeing Pat King's 136-page document, I pretty much just told you what it already contains. Sovereign citizen BS. And him putting a lien on the government, yeah, that doesn't fly. That's just fraud. Just like copywriting the public health orders was fraud. You know who else used that copyright scam? Chris Sky's buddy, Rob Carbone. Yeah, they copyrighted some kind of banking act, and that's when Chris Sky came out and said, I'm the finance minister because Rob Carbone said so. No, Chris, you're not the finance minister. I would have loved to have recorded someone breaking the news to Chris Sky that he was not actually the finance minister. But hey, I'm the divisive one. I'm the divisive one. It's all my fault. I'm so mean for telling the truth. Whoops. I'm so mean for telling the truth. Pat King's going to punch me in the face on Saturday. Well, Pat, I would advise you stay over on your side, wherever that's going to be on Saturday, because I really have nothing to say to you, because there is no discussing things with a pathological liar. There's no point. I'm not going to waste my oxygen. But what I will do is make sure that everybody I talk to knows that you're a pathological liar, Pat. And you know what? If anybody watching this thinks I'm divisive, you need to do some research. You need to actually watch what's going on, because you haven't been paying attention. And if you have been watching what's going on and you still think I'm being divisive over this, go watch something else, because whatever we're about to talk about is of absolutely no consequence to you anyway. So back to our originally scheduled programming. David has been hitting AHS hard. So hard, they had to come up with a whole campaign to make the whole thing go away called Thank You, YIU, the hashtag on Twitter, designed to completely deflect from the things that one of my favorite people has been digging up. David, give us an update on what you've been doing with AHS, if you don't mind.
I first of all, I have to thank you for building up my Twitter followers, and I have to thank you for the memories that I had to then go find. And I would like to thank you for giving me all the data I needed to make you look like an imbecile. And I want to thank you for giving us the evidence. We could go on forever. Actually, some of the, you know what, she may want to change her name, because there's been a lot of mileage got out of you and me and you. What did you do with the beds? What are you going to do next? It goes on and on. But anyway, it all started with that little mention. I've been looking at beds for a while and nothing added up. We've talked about it months ago, about the fact that we were supposed to have even our baseline is 8,500 ICU beds. We were supposed to have another 1,081 beds at our command, and that was fully funded, as one of the MLAs actually mentioned. But on the 23rd of September, Werner came up and said, we've never had this many people in ICU before in Alberta. And it was like, okay, that doesn't sound right. So I did some digging and put some charts together and started posting some tweets. And then the National Telegraph wrote an article on it and started publishing. And we expected that somebody would come back from AHS and say, no, you've got the numbers wrong, you're misinterpreting them. Nothing. Crickets. The next morning comes up and suddenly there's this hashtag, thank you. And it, instead of actually focusing on us, where I'm showing screenshots, data, information that the JCCF had got in a FOIP request, they didn't come back. They just sort of circled the wagons, and it was all the NDP lackeys and all the usual suspects like Darren Markland. And it was literally a campaign to avoid talking about the beds and to protect Werner Yu. And it's like, and that morphed into, well, it's, it's not her that promised beds. It was the government of Alberta. So, okay, so we've now got MLAs blaming themselves. MLAs being blamed for not giving her the money, and an MLA saying, we gave you the money, what did you do with it? And so we dug further. Well, then comes Saturday and Sunday, and I go check the numbers again, as I do most days, and they've all started to change magically. She magicked, which is not a real word, but then again, the numbers weren't real either. All these numbers changed, and suddenly what the MLA had called them out, he'd called her out because she gets paid over $600,000 and she doesn't know how many beds there are. A $20 billion budget, and we've got our baseline for intensive care units is 173 beds. All we need is a building site disaster or during the winter, a big crash on the motorway, and that would overwhelm 173 ICU beds, let alone people. People think that ICU beds are just for, COVID, or for people who have accidents. There are actually a lot of people that are scheduled to go to ICU. There's a cardiovascular ICU, for example. And that was one of the things that came back. It's like, oh no, you were mistaking the numbers, because the numbers you were quoting include the neuro ICUs and the cardiovascular ICUs. She was just talking about the adult ICU beds. Was she? Because that's not what she said. She said ICU, and she's never come out and clarified that. But the trolls did. Okay. So what are we saying? That we only count people who've got COVID or test positive for COVID if they're in the adult ICUs, not if they're in the Stollery or in neuro or in the CV, cardiovascular ICUs, or any of the others. We don't count those other ones. Except we do, because we have a number of people that are in those other ICUs that are currently in the hospitalization ICU stats. So you can't count them for one and not count them for another. And then I go back and start looking, and it's like, okay, these numbers aren't adding up. And she does another press conference, and nobody responds to the beds. It's sort of like they're trying to ignore it to death. And Dina comes out and defends her. Well, I didn't. You took it out of context. What I was saying about cases was not testing for cases, and that every case we have has been tested, except it isn't. We know that from there's people that we're working with right now who are in the hospital, have refused the test, and they are listed as cases. If you're contact traced and you don't test, you go down as a case. Sometimes you go down as a probable case, sometimes you go down as a confirmed case, depending on whether you're symptomatic or not, and which way the wind's blowing, and whether Werner's had a coffee in the morning. But there's lots of really important criteria that goes into case numbers now. But while she was denying that, nothing was going on. And then one of the reporters is panicking and talking to Werner about, well, if we're at 89% capacity of our ICU, and you've said in the past, and there's a whole document on their website about at 90%, they trigger phase 1 of triage, which means if you've got 20% or less likelihood, in the opinion of the doctor, of surviving the next 12 months, you don't get an ICU. They don't even try to save your life. And if we get over 95%, then we go to pretty much, you've got to be guaranteed to survive or you don't get an ICU. That sounds like murder to me, particularly when we've gone through the last few months, and we went over 95%, we went over 97%. We actually hit in the acute care at one point 98.3%, basically close to 99%, and in the ICUs 98.7%, which is 99%. In fact, we had 3 free ICU units in March of this year on one day. 3. Okay, just one car crash would have overwhelmed the system then. Forget about COVID. Thought we were in the middle of a pandemic. I thought we were preparing. I thought since April last year, we had 1,081 extra ICU beds just for COVID. That puts us potentially in the over 1,400 ICU beds. And I mean, we must have more than 173 because we've got over 700 ventilators. And not all ICU beds have a ventilator, but there are no ventilators outside the ICU. They may temporarily move them into another room, but because of the specialized nature of them, ventilators are in intensive care units because of the people that need to run them. So if we only have 173 ICU beds, And even if, we say, oh, well, all those other ones you were talking about, up to 400 beds, included every single type of ICU and CCU, which is critical care or cardio care, depending on who you talk to. The cardio care is CVICU, not CCICU, not CCICU. But you put all those numbers together, it's 400. We've still got over nearly 800 ventilators. Well, why have we got so many ventilators if we don't have any beds? Now, if we had 1,081 or 1,400 ICU units, that number of ventilators would make sense. Seems to me that either somebody spent an awful lot of money on nothing, or somebody's not spent any money and is actually telling porkies. Because the one thing that I did notice when I went through all this is the acute care beds. There's three bed types. There's a standard hospital bed, which isn't the majority. Then you've got your acute care, which is where most of the COVID patients are. And then you've got your ICU, which only has a very small number of the COVID cases in them. But we were swapping out. I mean, if you're going to actually create another ICU bed when you didn't have an ICU bed, as they keep telling us, oh, we didn't have any. So if you're going to create one, the most likely one is an acute care unit would change that bed into an ICU bed. But if we suddenly changed a bunch of acute care beds to ICU beds, our acute care beds should have gone down. They haven't. I mean, we have budgets. We paid for just under 8,500 acute care beds. It's there in all the documentation. It's still there on the website. We have 84, 90 something acute care beds in the province, except when you look at the chart, I went back all the way to January 28th. I'm going to go back a bit further, but that was all. It's a manual process. I can't. Funnily enough, they don't allow you to download that data, so I had to pull it manually. Even though the numbers between COVID beds, non-COVID beds, and empty beds change dramatically on a daily basis, almost like it's computer generated. It doesn't even look like the movement of people around, because some days there were hundreds of changes, and then they were almost reversed the next day. It didn't make any sense. But no matter how much the beds changed in those three groups, the total of acute care beds has been a static 5,931 since January the 28th. Not the 8,500 that we say we have. And then the acute care bed, the ICU beds, as the MLA pointed out, we had close to 300 of them midway through the year and towards the beginning of the year. But then in June, towards the end of June, just before we were open for summer, we suddenly dropped the ICU beds to 168. That's below our baseline minimum we have to have in the province, according to Vernieu as well. We've got 173 is what we have, but we're down to 168. Well, by doing that, it allowed it to then, it went up after, for a few days, it was 168. Then it went to 190, which meant it went from just under to just over the minimum for from July 1st to August 23rd. And then it started to ramp up as if the heroes and capes have come to rescue us. Look at all these beds we've pulled out of our backsides. Well, actually, we're just over what we had at the beginning of the year, according to their own data, which doesn't account for the beds that have been paid for. So you didn't really do anything. You just, this is like, Black Friday sales, Christmas sales, where they go, oh yeah, this product is a 50% off, because they doubled the price of it last week just so they could say it was 50% off. And when you actually check it, you go, hang on a minute, if I'd have come in 2 weeks ago, I would have paid less than this 50% off price. Smoke and mirrors, it is a game. It is deliberate and willful manipulation. And if it's something that would have happened at the end of this, and so, okay, we just didn't know what the numbers were. But this manipulation is going on in real time now, in direct response to information that's being flushed onto the internet. They are literally responding in real time. and editing the data. So on Saturday, they were called out for the the ICU beds, and they manipulated just the ICU beds in the data, the empty ones. And that was a number that was called out in the National Telegraph's article after the video I put out and all the data I put out. And they just sort of edited one set of data and only went back 2 weeks. So then there was a second article that came out the next day where it was pointed out, why did you edit just that 2 weeks of data and just those fields? And immediately, by the next morning, bearing in mind this is Sunday night going into Monday, they edited back 4 weeks for all the data, but again, still just the ICUs because we weren't talking about anything else. So then we started talking about the other beds. Well, then today they actually edited everything. Everything changed. And we changed from, at one point on Sunday, we'd gone from 89% capacity on the 21st to 74% of capacity. Then we went back up again, and then we're back down again today. They're literally manipulating the numbers on a minute by minute basis. Now, one or two things is happening. Either they haven't got a clue what they're doing, which is very unlikely because most of this data is entered into their system and automatically pulled. They are manipulating the data, or they're manipulating the data. Either way, what it says is what they're telling you on the screen and using to frighten people, to terrorize people, is if you don't go and get vaccinated, if you don't be careful, if you don't do these things, if you, every single thing that's been taken away from you, every threat that's been made to you, every offer of coercion in money, from lotteries to $100 here, and businesses are offering $1,000 to their employees. If you don't get vaccinated, then you'll be fired. All of that can only exist while there is a fear, a real fear, that the hospital system's going to collapse. If the hospital system is not going to collapse, and it's been coping quite happily despite the insanity that's going on and the stress that they're manufacturing by shutting whole wards down and everything else, and having nurses sit and watch. Now, not just nurses getting dressed and undressed into PPE. If you actually manage to get into a hospital now to visit somebody who's in a hospital, you will have to put all the PPE on, and you are watched while you put it on in the right order. And then when you're finished, you are watched while you take it off, because that's what, charge nurses should be doing, really, for the money they get paid. That's, in the middle of a pandemic, we've got so much time, they can actually stand around watching people get dressed and undressed. But without that panic, that fear, that stress, that impending doom that the health system is going to collapse, there is no reason for anything else to have happened. There is no reason for people to have been stopped from going into hospital. There's no reason for people to have been mandated into vaccines. There's no reason for businesses to be shut down. And the reality is, I've gone through all the data now, and we did hit, even though they're trying to tell us we've never gone above 89%. And depending on what day I look at the data, we may not have gone over 80% of capacity in ICU or acute care. But the reality is we've been getting almost to 100%. But in reality, as I've said before on this podcast at The Ledge and in many posts, I've spent lots of time lying on a gurney outside of a ward because there weren't any places to stay, because they were over 100% capacity. If you go on not the AHS websites, but the Calgary Health websites, which gives all the stats, they obviously haven't got the message to hide the numbers yet, but they've got the published stats for hospital beds for the province for the last 5 years. And most of the larger hospitals have run over 100% in the last 5 years. And I have never, in the 26 years I've been in Canada, have I heard them say, my God, the hospital system's about to collapse. We have to cancel 75% of children's surgeries and treatments who aren't actually at risk of anything. 50% of adult surgeries and treatments. It's funny that they're doing 75% of the children's treatments and surgeries, but only 50% of the adults. Oh, that's because they need to frighten the children, and that's why they're keeping the schools open, because we've got the vaccine clinics. If you haven't caught up yet as to what this is all about, it's about getting as many people as possible jabbed in the shortest possible time. If we really are at the panic we're at, where we've got more active cases now than we've ever had in the last 18 months, why are the schools still open? If kids can catch it, so they have to be vaccinated, why are the schools open? Why aren't they doing online learning? I mean, it's all been set up. They're all trained for it now. Why are we not? Why are we still sending the kids to school? Oh, because that's where the vaccine clinics are. And where they're getting ready for the 5+, or in this province, it'll be 4+, because Dina can't count. And Dina doesn't understand that 12+ does not mean, well, as long as you're 12 sometime this year. I mean, she's been pulling that stunt since April of this year, meaning that there have been literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of children that have been vaccinated in this province illegally. No matter what, whether you want to say or not, under the federal orders, the mandate for approval was 12+, not 12+ sometime this year. Just like learning to drive, having a driving license, is as long as you're not packing, is, has an age limit. The age of consent is a certain age limit, not as long as you reach that age sometime this year. For sexual assault, it's statutory rape if you're underage. The defence isn't, well, she would have been at the end of the year. She would have been old enough for me to rape her at the end of the year. No, that's not a defence. That's insanity. And so all of this that we've got is, there's lots of nurses and doctors trying to speak out about it. Some of them got hoodwinked into doing something wrong, and some of them, with Pat King and the rest of his cronies, Jekoff and Benita, and Paul Clazus, and Carla, set up these, they're all working with the Hive now. Anybody wants to know about that, go back to our previous podcast. We'll probably put out something in deep detail on that. Stay away from the Hive. Stay away from Benita, Jekoff, any of those people. And if they're mixing with other people that you do trust, you probably shouldn't trust them anymore either. If you're going on marches and Jekoff's there with his megaphone, and Jekoff's the one working with Kevin J. Johnson and Chris Sky, well, guess what? The Hive is being run by the common law people, Carla Wilcock and Paul Clazus. If anybody's gone to one of their secret meetings, because now they don't advertise them, they have a secret meeting and you have to send them an email, and then they send you a secret code. And Paul Clazus is such a smart guy, he uses his personal email for it. Pillock. But with what they've all done, we've got nurses right now that are talking to me about, I mean, they already had, concerns about the 3% pay cut, which goes beyond just the vaccine unvaccinated. That includes all the nurses. After everything they've done for 18 months, the government wants to cut their pay while all government workers are actually getting pay increases. And they've offered the RCMP a 20% pay increase to buy them off, which funnily it didn't, because they've said they don't support, the RCMP doesn't support mandatory vaccinations. But because of what Benita and Phil Primo and Jekoff, Kanani did outside the Royal Alex, which I warned them about at the beginning, now Bill 1 is being amended so that it specifically stops any protests anywhere near a hospital. So they were asking, some of them were asking me today, well, you know, for the vaccine passport or for even just for our pay rise, can we go on strike? I said, yes, you can, but you can't do it like you used to. Not allowed to do it outside the hospital because that's now 6 months in jail. That's not a provincial health ticket. That's not a $1,200 ticket. That's 6 months in jail. It is an arrestable offence. Congratulations, Benita. You did exactly what they wanted you to do. And jack off. So, you know, anybody wants to ask why from day one, when I met Josh at the legislator, I said, I can't be attached to any of them. And Josh agreed because he knows what they are. Unify the people. Action for Canada. Action for anything that's got a 4 in the middle is usually. Police on guard for thee. Nurses, frontline nurses. Just go listen to some of the speeches. See who they're connected to. Even, hey, you know what, Max? I've spoke to you. Your team got real big problems with the common law people. So why in the hell is Liberty Coalition just packed with common law groups and notices of liability and all that nonsense? And all your constitutional lawyers who are all pitching the same crap. You basically, through all your nonsense, up to now, you've shut down the nurses' one primary avenue to actually try and stand up for themselves. They can't do that anymore. You stopped that. And you knew exactly what you were doing when you stopped it because we told you and we warned them. And, you know, there's people on the inside that are pushing them as well. Well, what next? What are you going to do next? Oh, you protesting on the, what did you say? Pat's doing a sleep-in on the Sleeping for Freedom. You go, Pat. I maybe bring your heated leg this time because if it gets cold overnight, they'll never be able to get it off you if it freezes to you. And if you are going to come running over to punch, because you did mention me at the end of that as well. Yeah, that's a threat. Whatever. Stay away. I mean, at the end of the day, if you do come running over to us, I'm probably going to fall over laughing because I shouldn't make the fun of the disabled. But guess what? I'm disabled. And with your peg leg, you'll run like you shit yourself. So if you want to be mean, nasty, and threatening, guess what? I used to be a police officer. I don't know whether I mentioned that. I've dealt with a lot scarier than you. And we are dealing with a lot scarier than you. So go away, go crawl under your sleeping bag and stay away from the people that are trying to stop this instead of making money and trying to be superstars. Just go away and crawl under somebody into another hole. Go out to Carolot Acres and crawl in their hole. Watch out for the bullet casings while you're wandering around. You should probably clean them up, Carla, before the police arrive. You know what? I am done with you people. If we're going to win this battle against the government's lies that are falling apart in front of us, then people have to focus. We focused from the beginning. We can't do this on our own. But you certainly can't do it with a bunch of con people who are selling you a lie. Right now, the government is running scared. They're panicking. They basically open themselves up to a big question of where are all the beds? If we don't have the beds we're supposed to have, where's the money? And if you go into hospital right now, if you're visiting anyone in hospital right now, have a wander around the hospital if you can. I know it's hard, but go in overnight. The night staff tend to be a bit quieter. Have a wander around, even when you're going in. Have a look at how many empty beds as you walk past the wards. How many empty beds there are in the rooms. If we're in the middle of a pandemic, if we're in a state of emergency and the health system is about to collapse, why are there so many empty beds? Well, if you go to the new website that the province has suddenly set up to respond to where all the beds are, you can actually click on each area and see, and every single one of them says there should be X amount of beds, but there's only Y amount of beds. And in every single one of them, it says, because the staff are on holiday. The staff aren't on holiday. The staff are overworked, overstressed because they're sitting there doing the wrong things, being moved about, being messed about, being threatened, coerced, frightened, wearing these PPE over and over again, told lies, to the point that now they don't even know what reality is. I should probably let Josh speak in a minute, but one other point I want to make about beds and hospitals right now. This is being confirmed by too many people for me as a retired police officer to even want to listen to. But if you're checked in as somebody who's unvaccinated, first thing they'll do is they'll try and force you to be tested. And if you're unvaccinated, you will more than likely come back positive. What I'm hearing from every single inside source, and I'm talking hundreds of people inside, and I'm not talking janitors, I'm talking frontline workers, you know, the people that everybody's cheering on, are saying is that vaccinated people don't tend to come back positive. And if they do, they'll allow them to be positive if it's within the first 2 weeks of a vaccine, because they still count as unvaccinated. But the unvaccinated always come back positive every single time with these tests. I don't know. All I can say is what I'm hearing directly from the people inside the system. Then what happens is, if either you refuse to be tested or you test and you're positive and you're unvaccinated, every single person I've been told, the doctors are saying, well, that's it, you're going to die. So we may as well just put you on a ventilator. And then the family say, oh, we want to come in and visit them. Oh, no, you're not allowed to visit them because they've got COVID. Well, we'll let you come in and visit them if you commit to us putting them into end-of-life protocols. Now, most people won't know what that is. The healthcare workers will know what that is. It's not something new. It's something horrific that has been in this province for a very long time. It horrifies me that any society would have a process like this. One of our neighbours went through this before he died. And that is if they can convince you, yes, you can come in, but you have to say they're end of life. Well, they may as well call it ending a life as call it end of life. Because when you're declared end of life, it doesn't matter how, you could be sitting up drinking coffee and chatting. But if they say you're end of life, then the protocol is they stop all treatment. And all treatment includes giving you food and water. You will then, over the next few days, or if you're somebody like me who's got a bit of spare capacity, maybe a week or so, will be starved and thirsted to death. You will waste away and die in their care. That's how we look after people. So why is it that they're telling people, I mean, now I'm talking about people who are managing to get in, and there is a way to get in because the end of life thing is bullshit. 2 DSPs are allowed to get in. If you've got somebody in a hospital right now or in a care home, 2 designated support persons must be allowed in, no matter what, even if they've got COVID. They cannot stop you coming in. They may be able to say you need to make an appointment and we have to limit the time that you're in there. And if they're on high flow oxygen, they won't let you get too close to them because it aerosolizes. All of the staff go in there with the same PPE on, whatever, because apparently it's scared of the PPE that the staff wear, but it's not aware of the PPE that you wear, which is the exact same stuff, whatever. But you are allowed to go in. It's Dina Hinshaw's orders. It's the policy of all the hospitals. They cannot stop you going in. They will do whatever they can because they've been told to stop anybody going in because they don't want you to see what's really going on. They don't want you to see the empty beds. They don't want you to see the chaos where they don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't want you going in and seeing that your loved one is not actually dying and is coughing up yellow phlegm and so obviously needs antibiotics. They haven't got COVID. Now, that's not going to be the case. Some people will have respiratory diseases. Some people will be suffering from a lot of other things. If they've been vaccinated, they could be suffering from many things. But you have to go in and find out because right now you can't trust the health system. You can't trust anyone in there. Like, there are people that I know that I will trust, but only because I now know them and I've spoken to them. But the reality is, this healthcare system cannot be trusted. There is nobody in there you can trust until you've been in there and looked them in the eyes through 14 pieces of perspex strapped to your face and through walls, whatever. Get in front of them, ask to speak to them, ask to speak to somebody from infection protection control and say, I want access to my family member. I want access to the person I'm caring for. Karen was in seeing Stan again today. We've got people going in. She's been in to see her mum as well. She's allowed access. The care home that Karen's mum's in is on outbreak right now. They are locked down from a COVID outbreak. And she still gets in. Because without going in to see her mum, without going in to see Stan, firstly, we don't know how well they're doing. And secondly, they don't know how well the world is. And they don't get that one-on-one contact, which is the very essence of our life. If you are removed from contact from everyone, if all you ever see is a mask and nothing else, that's not living. That is end of life. They may as well stop feeding you. And that seems to be what we've now conditioned these doctors that are doing that come in to a patient who's already frail and say to them, you're going to die. You're not getting out of here. You're going to die. You're not getting out of here. You know, in the normal circumstances, the rest of the staff would have reported him and had him removed from the hospital. And nobody's doing anything. They're standing there watching. Joseph Mengele wasn't this evil. And I don't know whether you've got some sort of brain damage, these doctors, and the nurses that are supporting it. And that's not all of them. There are a lot of good ones in there. But there's enough of them they are no longer, they're not even, I call it, you're not a useful member of society. You have gone beyond that. You are now pure evil. There is nothing else that can be said about it. You should be charged with attempted murder. If you're trying to coerce somebody into, I will let you come in and see your family member, your most dearest person. I will let you see them if you agree to let me kill them. What sort of goddamn world are we living in when the healthcare workers are doing that? The doctors you put your life in say, I'll let you come in and see them if you tell me I can kill them. Because that's what it means when you agree, because a doctor says to you, how can you even make that decision without having seen them first? And they're giving them, for pain, they're prescribing them antipsychotic drugs. For pain, when they're struggling to breathe, they're giving them opiates, which are respiratory depressants. They make it harder for you to breathe. Does any of this sound like a healthcare system that's trying to look after us? Apart from the lies on the beds, at the end of the day, if Werner Yu, the CEO, getting paid over $600,000 a year, doesn't know how many beds are there in the middle of this pandemic, and that those number of beds are so critical, they're driving every other aspect of society, every single restriction, every change, every harm that's happening. They're driving people to suicide. If Werner Yu doesn't know how many beds there are, because I don't know how many beds there are. I know there's an awful lot of empty ones, but every time I look at the website, the numbers change, and they change apparently to fit a narrative. Because when I go prior to this last pointing out of issues, nothing changed. In fact, Josh, can you pull up the first slide just to see how obvious it is? And any one of my colleagues, that top slide was there on Saturday. That was when the MLA called them out and said, Why did you reduce the beds? If you look at the very top slide, that's the data for the 1st of July, as was on the AHS website at the time that Werner Yu said, we've got X amount of beds. It was there on Saturday morning. Then there was this big furore, and these squiggly lines, these very sharp angles, they're people being moved in and out of ICU beds as people either die or get better, as new people come in. And it is quite a, it's not a very smooth transition. You don't tend to stay in ICU for months at a time. People actually move in and out quite rapidly. There are some that stay there for a while. But right before we opened for summer, we dropped down to 168 beds for 3 or 4 days. And that's what the MLA said. Hang on a minute, why did we drop down to so lower beds when we've given you the funding to add over 1,000 beds? As you can see from the line before that, we were up into, over 250, 275, heading towards 300 beds. That was where we were, except for a period in March. Why did we suddenly drop the beds? And then why were they held at a static? If we're in a pandemic and there are people coming in and out of the ICU, it's very fluid, says Werner Yu. The ICU numbers are very fluid, said Werner Yu. Well, from the 1st of July to the 23rd of August, there were 190 ICU beds. Then there's that fuss. Then there's the hashtag Save Werner Yu. And then they didn't just change a little bit. They said, oh, no, we've never gone below that baseline. See, here's the data. And they went in and completely redid the graph. That graph isn't a different graph. That's the same chart on the same web page from AHS. They suddenly raised all the numbers up, but they didn't even just do that. They didn't just add 5 beds. You'll notice that right before that 190 at the top, there's a significant drop. That drop goes down to 168 beds, and then it goes up to 190. If you look on the bottom chart, that drop doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. Well, that drop was there going back. I've got all the historical data for these charts, and I'm not the only one. The internet doesn't forget. So you can try scrubbing it all you want, AHS. The data's still there. This is one of the most obvious, clear definitions of fraud I've ever seen. And this fraud is being used to terrify the population, to actually cover for lies. And through that terrorism is resulting in the deaths of many, many people. Some of them may be dying from COVID. The majority are not. People are losing everything. People are actually deciding to take an experimental vaccine that they have had so many reasons why they weren't going to do it since December 15th. They've had opportunities since December 15th, and then suddenly in the last few weeks, because of these manipulated numbers, these out and out deliberate, willful lies that have been coordinated with Alberta Health Services and the government, this information can't exist without the government's help. This presentation can't happen without the minister, without Dina Hinshaw, without Werner Yu, without Tyler Shandro, and now without the new guy, Cooper, Cropper, whatever he is. All of those people know what's going on. And you can see, if anybody can't see the difference between those two charts and how blatantly obvious it is that they've manipulated that data to change it so it looks different, so it looks like they're heroes. And these numbers will change again. Mark my words, these numbers will change again to make it less and less obvious how much they're manipulating the data. And manipulating the data, Kenny comes out and says, well, it was a success. Offering people $100 to go get vaccinated worked. It bumped all the numbers up. Actually, the majority of the numbers over the last few weeks came from the 3rd shot, where they went and coerced elderly people in care homes to give them their first shot. And they came in two lumps, which don't even look real. It's hard to believe any numbers now. But vaccination numbers are actually dropping off again now, because even with all the threats and coercion, they're starting to run out of people who will actually willingly go and put their life on the line. When they've stopped, nobody right now is going to do a vaccination because they wanted to. Everybody's doing it because they're coerced. And they're being coerced by false case numbers, because the majority of cases are asymptomatic people, which still today, the Scientific Advisory Group in Alberta states, anybody who's asymptomatic and test positive cannot be used to infer an infection. And yet they are cases. Dina Hinshaw, despite all their denials, has never once said that an asymptomatic person who tests positive isn't a case. And yet the Scientific Advisory Group that does all the research for her says that's the situation. They are lying to you, and it is as obvious as the nose on my face. It's just, it is criminal. And what's even more criminal is, despite the fact that I talk to these nurses and doctors every single day, constantly, there are a couple of coppers, a couple of police officers that talk to me, and that's it. And they're still not standing up. And they're frightened because they're going to lose the job. Well, guess what? Every single day you go to work, you run the risk of losing your life, or screwing up and doing something and losing your job. That doesn't stop you going to work and doing your job. You go and do your job because it's the right thing to do. Well, it's time to do the right thing. Just what we've shown you on the screen today should be enough for you to start a criminal investigation. At least go get a warrant to seize the data. Look at this data. Now look at that information, and it's not there. Look at this from, does anybody remember back in May, when there was a huge panic where the world was going to end, and Verna, you and Kenny came up, rushed onto the stage and said, everybody has to stay in the house and everybody has to get vaccinated because the health system's going to collapse, because we only have 3 empty ICU beds in the province. We're at 98.7% occupancy. No, you don't remember that? No, neither do I, because it didn't happen. And yet there in front of you on the screen is the data from the government's website. Why wasn't there a panic? Do you know why there wasn't a panic? Because this happens all the time. This isn't new. We run at capacity. In fact, that's the ICU beds. The next slide, Josh. The acute care beds, where the majority of COVID cases are. Does everybody remember in March when we were at 98.3% of capacity, and there was literally only 98 beds available in the province for people to go and lie in? We were at the state of collapse, 98.3%. Do you remember that? No, I don't either, because it didn't happen. I mean, that was probably the case. We probably were down to that level of beds, except for the beds we weren't using, that, you know, are currently made up and sitting in corridors or in auditoriums or wherever else it is. They're storing all these beds ready to go, but pretending they're not using them. Or maybe the units where they put the unit on outbreak with only 25% of the beds in use. Not a single COVID case in the unit. Unit after unit across the province, empty beds. The unit that Stan was on, before Karen left that unit, she counted 17 empty beds just in the unit Stan was on. I know of unit after unit after unit that has got dozens, hospitals with hundreds of empty beds, but that's not what it says here. We've never had such a low hospital occupancy as we have right now. In fact, again, on the government's website, can you pull up the next slide, Josh? This is going to be a bit of a shock to you. You see that line up there says 100%. And you see back in 2017 and 2018 and 2019, and even into 2020, in fact, at the beginning of 2020, we were over 100% in the majority of these few hospitals. And then in 2020, We dropped below, way below 100%. Now currently we're over 100% in a few hospitals. We were till March, but you've just seen the charts for the latest data where we're panicking. The hospitals are about to be overloaded, and yet we've got the lowest capacity we've had in the longest time. The last slide, Josh. Again, this is not my data. This is from a government website. Oh, back one. Look at the U of A, the green line at the top. That's over 100%. The only time it's dropped below 100% is in 2020, after COVID started, and 2021. We are not in a crisis. We have manufactured, or rather, you has manufactured a crisis. Why is that? And why is nobody investigating it? Because none of this information that you've seen tonight is a secret. It's on the goddamn internet, on the government's own website. This is enough for every police officer in this province, whether federal, provincial, municipal, every sheriff, every peace officer, to go into a hospital and demand to see what's going on, to search the paperwork, to actually seize the paperwork, and to start arresting anybody that's going along with this crime. It has to stop. This is, I've shown you over the last 18 months information that is, to me, very, very clear. But if you can't see from these charts that you are being manipulated and lied to, and this crisis is manufactured. I'm not talking about COVID doesn't exist. COVID exists, has some very clear clinical signs. In fact, we were talking about somebody the other day. He's wandering around with O2 sets at 50. Yeah, that is definitely COVID. Absolutely, 100%. But there are treatments for it. And if you don't treat them, they'll die. If that then turns into a bacterial infection on top of that, secondary infection, blood clots, whatever, if you don't treat them, they will die. If you tell somebody, even though they're still breathing and talking and making phone calls, yeah, they're end of life. You should, if you just agree to end of life, then we shall end their life for you. This is legalized executions. When is everybody going to wake up? And you know, we've called out Pat, Benita, Jekoff, all these other people. Can you all step aside now? Either step aside or wake up and focus on what needs to be done, because you are destroying the credibility of the people that are trying to make this end. You are stopping the police from standing up. The amount of nurses who were supporting what we were doing, and then what you've done with those insanity. They don't want to be associated with the freedom movement, because yes, you are terrorists in the same way as the government is. Right now, CSIS and the FBI do list you as terrorists. They're going to need to start listing the government, people inside the government, as terrorists. Because Verna, when you were doing this, there is only one reason you're doing this. You can't be doing it for the safety of the public. You're either doing it for personal gain or you're doing it for political purposes. If you're doing it for personal gain, then it's many, many counts of murder you're looking at. If you're doing it because somebody politically told you to do it, then it's counts of terrorism. Either way, you're looking at a criminal code violation. Every single one of you. And if my colleagues, and here in Alberta, almost a year, about 8 months ago, a bunch of police officers wrote an open letter stating what I'm stating now. Where are those police officers? Where are you? Don't tell me you're all run off to Rocco Galati and that insanity. He's not going to save you. JCCF's not going to save you. Carl Crosson's not going to save you. Hey, Carol, how many cases on your website had you actually won? How many are they even yours? Give us a call. You've got my number. And maybe somebody needs to ask you about when you go and approach AHS and make some statements. Maybe the Law Society needs to know about what was really in that list. Because you know what? I'm done playing games with you people on all sides. This isn't a game. This is people's lives, and people are dying. And it needs to stop. Sorry, Josh, I took over. Oh, Christ, that was a long time. I'm going to be quiet now.
I'm okay with it. I think that was great, Dave, because my mind's, been kind of in a rut all day. Just seeing. I mean, on one hand, I'm just going to talk frankly here. When you see all these protests in Edmonton being organized to directly interfere with what we're doing. I mean, it was one thing when these things were happening on different days, different places. And you see the people that are involved. But I mean, and sometimes you just question your own sanity. It's like, well, if there's this many people that hate what we're doing, it's like, why do we do it at all? But the reality is it's not that many people. When we look into who's organizing these movements that are countering what we're doing, they claim to be on the same side, but they're not. When we really dig into them, it's all the same dozen people, maybe 18, maybe 24 people at the most across the country that are doing this. And there's certain nexuses. There's a couple of people where everything just seems to revolve around them. Like one of them is Kellyanne Wolf, who was Pat King's recent girlfriend.
Oh, don't tell me they've broken up again.
I think they've broken up. Yeah, there was. Yeah.
Who got custody of the leg?
They, but I don't care about their personal relationships. I mean, some of it gets pretty weird because we've been hearing about the rock and roll style parties, like Chris Guy's birthday bash here in town with stripper poles and bikinis, the whole 9 yards. I mean, you guys are financing all. If you're okay with that, then I guess whatever. I can't tell you where to put your money. But
just
Jack
remember to bring cash.
Kellyanne Wolf is one of these nexuses. When Art Pulaski got arrested yesterday, or not yesterday, whenever that was, 2-3 days ago, whose voice do you hear at the end of that arrest video? It's a very recognizable voice. Whose voice do you hear? None other than Ed Jamnisek. And Ed Jamnisek, you'll recognize him from the Kevin J. Johnston show. Right? Him and Kevin J. Johnston go back years. Kevin J. Johnston, I've mentioned him before. He has a long and sordid history of hate crimes and all sorts of repugnant acts that do nobody any good. They gain him lots of fame, and people think he's hilarious because he's pushing boundaries. That's not the kind of guy you want on your side in a fight like this one. We don't need people destroying our credibility. We already have enough time, enough trouble gaining any credibility whatsoever, considering the way the media is stacked against us. And, Kevin J. Johnston's antics don't help that. Well, there's Ed Jamnisek on the plane landing in Calgary, just happens to be there, probably holding the phone, filming it all. Interesting. Ed Jamnisek, very closely tied to Kellyanne Wolf. Kellyanne Wolf claims to be on the board of directors or the strategist, something like 15 different organizations across the country, including Mothers Against Distancing, Hugs Over Masks, We Are All Essential, Vaccine Choice Canada. All of these organizations are wrapped up with Action for Canada. They're wrapped up with Stand for Thee. A lot of them trace right back to Christopher James Pritchard of A Warrior Calls. Clearly, a lot of them are taking... Christopher James is the leading sovereign citizen probably in the world right now. And he's right here in Canada teaching people how to print their own driver's license and make cardboard license plates. And don't even argue with me saying that's not what he's about. Go to his website. How many of you idiots that take in those streams and absorb his bullcrap have actually taken a look at his website? How many of you have actually taken a hard look at Action for Canada's website to find out that they want to ban marijuana, they want to ban radical Islam, they want to send the LGBTQ people back to the Stone Ages? Does anybody even care about any of that stuff anymore? You can't even have a job right now unless you're vaccinated. But let's worry about the LGBTQ people. I mean, your kids are being forced muzzled in schools, but let's worry about pot legalization. You know, these are the people, we've been calling them out for months, years, over a year, 18 months. You know, now I see Pat King down at the legislature with Rochelle Feniak. Rochelle Feniak, you know, we actually tried to cooperate at the beginning of this. It was a total failure, because she would just platform every nut who had something to say. Well, that doesn't help anybody. We're trying to get information out there. We're trying to remain credible. And when all your sovereign citizen friends get up and start going on about the Magna Carta and King John and the myth is Canada, and you got to check out Doug Force because he'll tell you and he'll explain all the magic that basically says Canada doesn't exist. Well, if Canada doesn't exist, why are we doing this? Why are we even bothering? If it were that simple, Doug, why don't you have it settled already? You know, Pat, if your paperwork is so powerful, this 136-page document you have mailed by registered mail to Kenny 2 different ways. If it is so powerful, why do you need to have a sit-in or camp out or party or whatever the hell it is you're doing? Rochelle, I'm surprised you didn't bring the petting zoo again. Literally. Yes, she brought a petting zoo to the legislature. You know, and it's we warned that these hospital protests would get Bill 1 invoked. We've warned that where Benita Peterson is setting up these rallies that are competing with ours and designed to interfere with them, she is basically encroaching. She's right on the line between the territory of the Edmonton Police Service and the sheriffs. The Worldwide Freedom Day, that protest spilled out into the intersection. You've blocked the entrance to the legislature grounds. You're spilling into an intersection. You are, by definition, blocking critical infrastructure. It makes it pretty easy for the media to take that and say that those rowdy anti-lockdown protesters or the freedom movement or whatever the heck you are creating a huge distraction and inconvenience for the citizens of this city who are just trying to stay safe during a pandemic. And they'll just shut it down. And then all we got is podcasts on Facebook, which censors us like crazy. You know, people need to think what they're supporting. And, you know, they accuse me of being divisive. Well, we've been working on something behind the scenes. I really want to show it to you guys. It's a mind map of the connections between all of these players and the sovereign citizens that it all traces back to. I would say 99% of this movement is controlled behind the scenes, either by maybe the government itself, sovereign citizens, but there are some shady stuff going on behind the scenes we have been trying to warn everybody about. You know, the police that David was working with, they took that message. They know what we're talking about. And they said, it basically spooked them. Now they won't even, but the nurses are just plowing forward with it. You know, and they're being led down the path to slaughter. I mean, this huge letter writing campaign, we're already hearing of doctors that have been axed from tenured positions at the U of A for signing this letter. Jason Copping, the new health minister, took that letter signed by 3,000 Alberta healthcare workers and laughed at it. As David laughed at it when he said, you guys don't want to be putting your names on this. Number one, it's not even a secure website. Number two, you can't even be sure what you're signing to because the idiots, Carla Wilczuk, Paul Klazis, and her boyfriend, the idiots that set up that website to take the personal information of healthcare workers wasn't even properly secured. The letter they were signing could be changed at any moment, and now they have signed a completely different document. There is no security. It was completely bogus. All they did was gather your information in a project that was guaranteed to fail, so that they could keep your email addresses and invite you to the sovereign citizen, free man on the land, common law secret conference in a basement of some creepy store on White Avenue where they could tell you that you don't have a birthday because only ships are birthed. You were born, baby. You were born. We're going to celebrate your born day from now on, because that makes all the difference in the world, right?
Yeah, I'm actually, Paul Clueless should contact LinkedIn because I got a notification this week that congratulate Paul on his birthday. And I was like, oh my God, now even LinkedIn's going after him. Do they not know? Did he not contract with them? You know what? If you fall for that crap, you should probably just wear a mask and get vaccinated.
If you fall for that crap, you are of no use to this movement. And I wish you would just go back to your couches. You know, every day I'm fighting with people on Telegram. Oh, you're being divisive. And it's like every day I have to go through the history of Pat King and his lies. The guy has never, every time his mouth is moving, I know he's lying. That is how pathological he is with the lies. It never ends. It's continuous. You know, even what he said today about our rally. Oh, I helped clear out the Antifa guy for you, and you thanked me. Yeah, I did thank you. But in reality, that was mostly Jack Schultz and Zach that did that. You just tried to take all the credit for it. And nobody asked you to be there. Nobody asked you to speak. I certainly didn't ask you to speak. You asked me to speak.
I definitely didn't ask you to speak. In fact, Karen and I went, what the?
Yeah. Well, no, he asked me, and my response was, you better not mention this copyright bullshit, Pat, because that's bullshit, and I don't want it. And what did he do? He got up there and went all over it anyway. And it's like, you're an idiot, Pat. And you're never speaking at our rally again. And if you show up on Saturday thinking you're going to get microphone time, there's another thing coming for you. Yeah, and it ain't going to be microphone time. And that's not a threat, but you ain't getting microphone time. That's what I'm saying. I will turn off the system and shut it down before I give the mic over to you, because all you're going to do is get up and lie. And I see no point in that for anybody. And I don't even see any point in having a conversation with Pat King, because all he has done, and I've talked to him on the phone, you know, back when Art Pulaski and Brad Kerrigan, they used all that white nationalist imagery to promote their event here in Edmonton that completely screwed up our event. And we had to cancel. It's the only one we really had to cancel but they wanted to bring the tiki torches. So they pulled up Charlottesville imagery from the U.S., where one day it was a Ku Klux Klan march, wandered around the town with torches, and the next day it was a Trump rally where some poor woman got run over. Brad Kerrigan used that march footage with them marching with torches as the footage for his poster for this event.
And then they advertised that they would coordinated with the police, and the police supported what they were doing. And they did it so much that EPS had to come out and do an hour-long conference saying how, yes, they had spoke to them and said, don't you dare, are you crazy, are you stupid, you should not be doing that. So it wasn't just us telling them. They lie and lie and lie, because all they can do is lie.
And so, you know, like, the event went off more or less without a hitch, with the exception of Art Pulaski being arrested as usual. And
Dowd was arrested.
Or it was Dowd that was arrested, right? That's what it was. But the number, I think the police said it was over $100,000 worth of enforcement. It was practically an army of police there. They had to have a line going down the middle, because Brad Kerrigan, Art Pulaski, Kevin J. Johnston, Pat King, all of these people had so antagonized Antifa and Black Lives Matter that there was no way this was going to be a peaceful event without a massive police presence. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. People didn't even know where to stand. You know, people were showing up in wheelchairs, and they would have to cross lines of Antifa to get to the side of the protest. They didn't even know what side to be on. It was ridiculous. And we called it out, rightfully so. We said the torches were a safety hazard. You don't bring offensive weapons. We didn't say they were racist. People say I said the torches were racist. No, other people said the torches were racist. Lots of other people, including the Edmonton Police Service. I don't care about that. For us, it's called bringing an offensive weapon to a protest. And 2 or 3 weeks later, we were proven correct when somebody in Calgary, because they were so obsessed with these torches, they continued to march with them in Calgary for weeks. Someone was actually hit in the face with their own torch. Luckily, injuries were minor. Could have been a lot worse. And what did Pat King do with all this? He calls me up out of the blue. I just want to parlay with you. You don't even know what the word means, Pat, but okay. You want to parlay, whatever. And we have a conversation. And he invites me on to Kevin J. Johnston's show. When I say, why would I go on Kevin J. Johnston's show when he has zero credibility and all it would do is harm me? You know, and I said, like, he's a clown. Why would I go appear with a clown? Oh, he's not a bad guy. He just takes it a bit too far, blah. Well, he later goes on the show with Kevin J. Johnston and completely twists the conversation that we had into some kind of total BS lie And then, to top it all off, claims that he recorded it. Just like he has the evidence. He's got the transcripts. He's got the documents. He's got this. But they never get produced. Pat, if you have this incriminating phone call with me, Rochelle, if you have these incriminating screenshots of me, Jeff Sharp, if you have these incriminating screenshots of me, please share them. Now is the time. Let's get it all out in the air. Let's get it all out in the open. And let's just get it out. I mean, if I am some kind of evil villain, as you all accuse me of being, and you claim to have the evidence, please produce it. Rochelle, I have been confronted by several people that claim that I used a racist slur against you. You and I both know that never happened. You claim to have screenshots or recordings or whatever it is. I challenge you. Produce it. Please. Jeff Sharp, you claimed I burnt down Art Pulaski's garage. I haven't been to Calgary in years, Jeff Sharp. So explain to me, if I haven't left, I've left Edmonton, but I haven't been in Calgary in ages. And I wouldn't burn down Art Pulaski's garage. What? Please produce the evidence, Jeff Sharp. Benita, why are you working with Jeff Sharp? You know, why is Pat working with Rochelle Fediak? Why is it this small group of people that all ties to these losers in Toronto? And has anybody else noticed that anytime some kind of new restriction comes in, either Chris Sky or Vladislav Slobodislav or Kelly Ed Wolf, they got to go do a demo about how you could get in the police's face and just basically tell them to go away by reading things off of your phone. You know, whether it was Chris Sky in the airport breaking the quarantine rules or if it was Vlad and his buddies in the food court. Why is it that you guys always get away with that on the first day, and then anybody that tries it after that seems to either get arrested or ticketed at the very least? I mean, I find it interesting. It almost seems like you guys encourage people to go out and challenge these things, knowing damn well they're going to fall on their faces and have thousands of dollars in fines to pay, and it will only serve to discourage anyone else from standing up, because we all saw what happened to that guy. Like, I just find that incredibly convenient. Like, how many stories, Dave, did you hear after Chris Sky pulled all his stunts at the airport of people going to try it themselves, and they just ended up with like a $5,000 fine? I mean, I heard 5, 6 of those.
So again, all of these things, they're not new. I mean, Paul, the Greater Edmonton Common Law Association, that caller says, we haven't heard in there, Sheriff Keith. We haven't done that. We haven't been anywhere near that in over a year. Well, go and have a watch of Benita's streaming and Rob Ham's screaming of the day Max Bernier was here a month or so ago, where Carla gets up and does the full common law speech and announces the Greater Edmonton Common Law Association that she runs with Paul Clasus, and then go and look at the subsequent ones on the Sunday with Benita, where Benita has every single common law speaker there is speaking, including Carla Wiltshire. I have never been there. I don't do that anymore. But no, I don't sell alloidial titles. Somebody else sells them for me.
Rudy Bruce just commented, "This is not helping the country, Josh." Neither is you getting arrested in gas stations, Rudy. Good grief, Rudy. Grow a friggin'... God, Rudy, all you do is go out there and screw things up for everybody else, and you're going to tell me I'm not helping the country? You're a clown, Rudy.
Yeah, I mean, like, all of these stunts, all of these cons, all of these games have been around for more than 100 years. If any of them worked, they wouldn't need to do them anymore. The only reason they're doing them now is because they have never worked, and they never will. They just get your house repossessed. They get you bloody tased. they get you in jail, and they basically make us look like fools because all they see and all the media wants to see is you bunch of clowns. There's a reason that every time I've been interviewed by CTV, it doesn't air because I don't give them anything to air. I publish everything that I've done and said, and I challenge them to come and cross-check anything I do and say. But I won't say anything that I can't back up in front of a judge. The credibility is the only thing we've got, and you, the lot of you, have no credibility, but more than that. You know what? It would be bad enough if you were just a bunch of clowns irritating people and getting in the way, but you were dragging good people down. You are taking people that could be standing up for their rights and helping. You are going to get people killed once they lose all hope because you took it off them, because of your nonsense. This isn't a game where you're going to make a bit of money. These people have lives. They are at the end of their rope. You need to stop the insanity because you are as dangerous as the government now with them following you. And you want to know why? You know what? We've never stopped anyone coming to our rally. They say, oh, well, you're being divisive. We were not the one. We've been there every single week. I've been there every single week other than February the 20th, standing up on that square, talking every single week since August last year. Josh has been doing it longer than me. We do it at the exact same time in the exact same place every single week. If somebody else comes and sets up shop in a competing rally, we're not the divisive ones. We're not the ones trying to cause problems. When they come and deliberately set it up to drag people off the square on a stupid bloody march while we're doing our speeches, the things that people come to listen to. They don't come for a party. The time for partying was never here. It's not that it's not here anymore. It was never here. This was always about people's lives.
Well, I wouldn't bother reading the comments section. The number of, like, I might just have to put together a poll to see actually where we stand with it, because I am really hoping and praying that the number of people that support these common law sovereign citizen idiots is a very small minority of who actually watches and follows this channel. Because if the majority of them are in fact sovereign citizens in common law, I'm done. That's it. Like, there's no hope. This country's over. And all you will get is a bloody civil war, or you will get water cannoned and pepper sprayed and rubber bulleted into submission. Neither one of those things is an acceptable solution for me and my children. As for the rest, you know, if there are still normal people here, and you know what, people in the comments section, if you've been watching this channel, you understand what we're talking about, and you're not attacking these people in the comments for their stupid, asinine, ignorant behavior, I don't know what to say. Because I'm so sick of having to waste my life on these people.
I said to my colleagues, now I'm going to say it to everybody in those comments. I haven't looked at the comments because I don't see them right now. I can only help you if you help me. And if you're not going to help me, what use are you? So if you're just sitting there thinking that listening to this podcast is just a fun way to take up your evening, for God's sake, get a life. Because you know what? If all you can do is listen to me rant on a little fat old Bobby, then, you know, if you're here to actually learn something, to participate, and you're sitting there watching people spout nonsense on there and you're not doing anything, then again, we can help you if you help us. If you don't help us, what use are you? We're not here for numbers. We're not here to, you know, like Chris. There's no send stars here like Chris Scott. There's no donate to me like Chris Scott, or bring cash like Benita, or hit donate buttons like the JCCF and Kevin Johnson and Chris Sky, and there's no books being sold here. We're here to try and make a difference, to educate people, to try and help, because that's all we can do. But at the end of the day, nobody wants it. And what the hell are we doing here? Here for my grandkids. I'm here for your grandkids. Because if not us, who? If not now, when? I might not wear the uniform, but I'll never take it off.
Well, no matter what everybody else is doing, we're going to keep doing what we've been doing. Educating, empowering, edifying. We stand for truth, justice, and liberty every Saturday, 1 p.m. We meet and greet. 1:30, the speeches start. Pat King is not getting the microphone. And if I have to get punched in the face to see Pat King get hauled away in handcuffs, then so be it. Because Pat King, for what he's done, he deserves nothing less. The guy's a fraud. I'm done explaining this. We're going to be there 1 p.m. You choose where you're going to stand. I don't care. I've never really cared. But it bugs me when people are deliberately messing with us. You know? Buzz off, Benita. Buzz off, Pat King. We got enough stress without you. If you actually contributed something, maybe we'd have something to talk about. But neither one of you has contributed anything positive. And until you do, go perch and rotate. I give you the Trudeau salute. Thank you all. Have a great night. Keep standing up for truth, justice, and liberty. That's the only reason I'm divisive, people. That's the only reason I'm divisive. It's because it's the damn truth. If you don't like the truth, why are you watching this? Seriously. That's the only reason you're watching this. Because I tell the truth. Because David tells the truth. You watch Pat King because he's funny. Because he's a big, arrogant goof that makes you chuckle. And you wish he had a little bit of his testosterone. That's why you watch Kevin J. Johnston. But you watch us for the truth. And we're going to keep giving it to you. No matter how divisive you think we are.